Hey guys, Stupid here. I really don't like doing videos like this. It's a lot of work. I have to write a script to keep from rambling, etc. If there's one thing I care enough about to do these kinds of videos, it's Sonic. So, let's talk Generations. Even though you've likely heard it all already. I haven't. I don't watch other people's Sonic videos. I don't. Rather not. Anyways, I'm probably looking at this from a different angle anyway, so hear me out. Here's the situation. The Sonic Generations remake didn't just change one or two scenes, contrary to how some folks may have made it seem. The entire game's voice acting was redone, with the possible exception of Amachow. I'd say about 80% of the audible dialogue was rewritten, again, discounting Amachow. And even what wasn't rewritten was reacted. I'm gonna examine some of these changes, and we'll talk about what's good, what's bad, and what's ugly about this. Now, technically speaking, most of the changes are meaningless on the surface. Simple rewording that often has the exact same meaning. Although I do believe each and every change was done either as a means of censorship or as a quote-unquote lore fix. And lore fixes sound good on paper, so let's focus on this first. Let's see. Tails now recognizes Green Hill and Chemical Plant clearly, even going so far as to reference their islands by name. Again, sounds good on paper. Sonic also refers to the Time Stones. Eggman references the amusement park from Colors. And explanations surrounding the Time Meter and White Space are more detailed and pseudo-science-y sounding. All sounds like good things, right? Well, I have a few issues with how they're done. Namely, these changes alter the tone and pacing of their scenes. Odd for the pacing, since the scenes appear to be the same length. A lot of humor was sacrificed for these lore fixes, and while nothing was laugh-out-loud hilarious in either version, the dialogue of the original had much more charm to it, even if it sometimes felt like lore was being ignored. I do think that can be easily explained away. In the original version, Tails says Green Hill doesn't look familiar, then proceeds to describe how the color was drained from it. That's why it doesn't look familiar.
Or is that place we were just in awfully familiar?
Not to me, but this place looks like something sucked all the life and color out of it.
At any rate, Tails reacting to the smell and the pink water from the chemical plant is far more entertaining than simply stating, "This is the chemical plant!" in case the viewer didn't notice. Honestly, I've been sick of nerd Tails for a long time. Just because he's smart doesn't mean that should be 100% of even classic Tails' personality. He was able to pilot the plane and still be a cute boy child in the 90s. Why does he have to talk like a soulless robot in 2024? And for years prior. While I'm on Tails, and I just don't know where else to put this, they have pre-Lost World Tails suggesting they team with modern Eggman before he's kidnapped in the remake. Lost World on the timeline is the very next game. You just actively made Lost World's already bad writing even worse. And for what? And also, let me get this out of my system too. Time Stones were a one-off thing. Sonic didn't bring them up in 06 or any other game after CD. Why should he bring them up now in the rewrite of Generations? It's just another pointless Ian Flynn reference. We don't need it. Generally speaking, the more nerdy tone of the white space scenes has made them almost insufferable. I'll take the lighter tone of the original any day of the week. It's not like any addition to Sonic's side of the story was made to warrant the quote-unquote heavier tone. It's still a silly plot on the face of it, but the re-recorded dialogue generally has less energy and life to it. And also, despite the increased quote-unquote seriousness, anything that might be deemed quote-unquote scary for kids in the dialogue has been toned down. I'll get back to that in a moment. Before I leave the topic of lore fixes, here are some I feel are actually good changes. Classic Eggman can now be seen when Time Eater abducts him. The idea of treating him like some big reveal was always dumb. No one ever didn't expect to see Classic Eggman. Cream's dialogue was unchanged except for having her say, Mr. Sonic. It's a good touch since it's how she's supposed to talk. Rouge calls Classic Sonic Blue instead of Buddy, which I suppose is slightly better, although she never really says either usually. Modern Sonic also replies, "You're a real gem, Rouge," which his replies in the rescue scenes are all new. Yeah, totally new. Like, weren't in the original at all. It was silent. But aside from that one, they aren't particularly interesting, and considering Shadow doesn't say anything to Omega, Big, or Orbot and Cubot at any point in Shadow Generations, it feels really weird. They could have just not added Sonic lines to keep it consistent, or they could have given Shadow one line with each character. But yeah, this is basically it for dialogue changes I consider good. Now we're gonna talk censorship. I'm sure you already heard about Rouge's weird outfit alteration, Amy's cursed cupcakes, and Classic Sonic apparently eating Angel Island or something. These are all pretty bad changes, but you've likely already heard arguments as to why, so... But I do want to say it's pretty dumb to change Knuckles' dialogue without changing Sonic's response animation, since it was an actual response in that case. The thing with Amy's changes is that quote-unquote violence was toned down. I keep saying quote-unquote because you can't see me doing the finger quotes. But yeah, both in the opening and the ending, her violence was toned down. Sonic not placing his hand over her face, and Amy not knocking Knuckles into next week. Somehow, I don't think kids who played the original started slapping people a lot because of those scenes. But this is just the most obvious censorship. Let's show off a few comparisons.
The area is empty and dead. Dimensional energy. And all that's left behind is this lifeless white void.
It's the last look you'll get before I close your eyes forever. It's the last thing you'll see in this world.
Oh my gosh, how fragile do we consider modern kids? Close your eyes forever is gonna keep little Timmy up at night. Dead has to be replaced with lifeless? As though that's so much cheerier? Also, Flynn's got his weird hatred of religious symbolism. I mean, he removed Chaos's godhood. He shot on Mephiles so hard in Shadow Generations, and now Espio can't reference the soul? It's not like Sonic was delivering Bibles door to door, come on! And again, all these changes largely make the writing blander. So safe, so tame. Except where it isn't. Amy can't reference flirting with Sonic, but she can call Classic Sonic cute. Literally flirting with Sonic. What was even the point there? It's also absurd because none of the text dialogue was changed at all. So Amy still flirts with Sonic to her heart's content there. It's just dumb. Why change it at all? Just to dust off this old chestnut, If you want to ask, why do I care? Why do you care to have it changed? I care because it makes the entertainment generally worse. I also just lightly touched on this earlier, but some lore adjustments actually run counter to the lore. Again, bringing up the time stones now, but not in 06. Doesn't make sense. Having Tails be willing to work with Eggman here, but not in Lost World, makes less sense than it already did. Even classic Eggman's "he had a little help" line makes less sense since Tails' line was changed from "but how" to "of course." It was a response line. What the heck? Even Shadow Generations is insane. They made a full cutscene for the Sonic vs. Shadow fight, but the text dialogue is unchanged in Sonic Generations, so it still comes off as the past Shadow. While Shadow Generations reveals it is in fact the present Shadow, who just repeats old lines with Sonic anyway, but it's not played as him tricking Sonic into thinking it's past Shadow, which why would he? It's just played as Sonic and Shadow being incapable of thinking of other things to say to each other. Because Ian Flynn just felt like plagiarizing? I guess? I don't want to say he can't write, because Maria and Gerald were quite well written, particularly in their text dialogue. Someone else in charge of that? That why Sonic Generations didn't alter text? I don't know. This video is probably kinda long already, but I'm not done. Let's talk performances. What did they do to Mike Pollock? Has he really aged that much since Frontiers? Sounds like he's really struggling during that final boss cutscene in particular, where classic Eggman now sounds older than modern Eggman. That's not how aging works.
You're not in a position to demand anything, you nasty little pincushion.
Eggman! But how?
He had a little help.
Dr. Robotnik!
Nobody calls me that anymore. You're not in a position to demand anything, you nasty little pincushion.
Eggman! No wonder!
He had a little help.
Dr. Robotnik?
Nobody calls me that anymore.
To be fair to him, though, and, I'm not here to dunk on Mike Pollock, so to be fair to him, the post-credits scene feels actually better acted.
What time is it? It's the exact same time as when you asked earlier, and it'll be the exact same time when you ask later. There is no time here! Let me just say that this was a brilliant plan that you came up with. Don't get too self-righteous. It'll be your plan pretty soon. I'm gonna dedicate the rest of my life to forgetting it. I heard that!
It's almost like he's frustrated having to redo all these lines, and he's channeling that to enhance the performance of an aggravated Eggman. But that aggravation hurts his performance elsewhere, where Eggman should be more upbeat. Roger Craig Smith's performance is also more sluggish through most of the game, just generally having less energy than the first time around.
Destroy me? You and what mustache? I beat you all the time by myself, and now there's two of me. Destroy me? In your dreams, Eggman. I beat you all the time by myself, and now there's two of me.
Except in the end cutscene where he probably should be talking slower to fit the tone. I mean, it's his goodbye to classic Sonic. And is it just me, or is Tails' actress struggling to keep that voice from cracking in some scenes? Like, you guys could do multiple takes. I'm doing multiple takes here right now. Anyway, these are the characters we spend the game with, and they must have did everything in one take, because their performances are just a mess. Why not just use the voice lines you already had? They were perfectly fine. They even redid the exact same lines in some cases. And aside from the post-credits scene, the performance was always worse. Except for the other characters in their rescue scenes, they're generally fine in terms of performance. I even thought for plays that it was the exact same performance, but it actually was redone. Charmy sounds like a damn girl now, though. And again, they didn't alter his lines, so why redo them if they're gonna be worse? So anyway, why do we care? Short answer is because we like Sonic and want to keep liking Sonic. The changes to generations sets a precedent, and it's all the more uncomfortable to see Sega's utter rejection of nostalgia in a game that is literally all about nostalgia. Did anybody else see the hypocrisy in this? These kinds of remakes shouldn't be altered in this way. They should be lovingly preserved the way they were, and changes should only be additive, never in defiance of the original artist's intentions. Adding Chow to look for in the levels, that's a good change. Purely additive does not alter the original in any way, more or less. Removing humor for whatever reason, that's a bad change. Whether it's censorship, lore consistency, or, I don't know, spite. It often seems like when other franchises... I'm gonna redo this whole line. Removing humor for whatever reason, that's a region. See, I'm retaking this over and over. You could have done that too, Sega Sonic Team. Removing humor for whatever reason, that's a bad change. Whether it's for censorship, for lore consistency, or, I don't know, spite. It often seems like spite when other franchises do it. Maybe it is spite. They remove Tails' humorous question about where Sonic puts his rings in favor of saying, "The timeline will shift back to normal," followed by, "Don't think about it too much."
Wow, where does somebody put all those gold rings? You know what? I don't know. I keep forgetting to ask. So, I have a question for you. Once we're home, you think the timeline will be restored? Yep. Just don't think about it too hard.
Almost sounds like Sega making Tails tell us off for caring about the continuity of the series. And here's the thing. Having two versions of the same story automatically damages continuity. With the 3DS version, it was easy to just say that's a deliberately inferior version and just ignore it. This is a version meant to replace the original, and that creates tonal and narrative inconsistencies in the games surrounding it in the old timeline. Continuity isn't just a list of lore references, it's how all of that fits together and forms into an overarching story. And certainly, the continuity we have isn't perfect, but somehow we loved it anyway. It doesn't need to be changed. Shouldn't be changed. How dare you take moments from us, erase lines that may have been iconic from the series? What's next? Are you gonna take away "this is happening" because it doesn't fit Ian Flynn's version of the characters? I've said it before, but if Sega lays one finger on the writing or even the voice acting of Sonic Adventure 1, I won't forgive them. And I'm sure many feel the same way about at least one piece of media somewhere out there. Every game is someone's favorite. Stop ruining them, game industry. Embrace the fans' love, nurture it, help it grow. You can do remakes that enhance the original, but not if you don't respect the original. The Shadow Generations is pretty cool though. I'm still making videos on that, so check them out if you want a nice palate cleanser after this video. I'm more trying to have fun on those. Otherwise, thanks for listening. Have a good day. Bye-bye.